Alright, this lesson is titled Time as Shadow. And this is August 6, 2018. I'm having a lot of different thoughts lately from the scriptures, which I'm happy about. And so I'm changing fast. And I really like that. It's a different experience because I was cultured, as many of us were, from a child, to just hear the preacher say something, or your Sunday school teacher, and later on your Torah Hebrew camp teacher, to hear what the teacher is saying, or the preacher, and just believe it. And you stay like that, and you're going to be like that till the day you die, because you got the truth from God. And there might be certain minor things that you differ in, but it's only going to be in a minor way. But for the most part, you're going to remain just the same as your church and just the same as your Torah group. That to me now, upon deeper investigation of religion and of the Torah, seems to me to be anti-creator and actually is anti-Torah. And I made a lesson 2 or 3 months ago titled "The Bible is Anti-Bible." And it's funny to me that people are so interested in changing. I thought this morning that we were taught to just believe whatever our preacher or teacher taught us. And they made you feel guilty because you're reading all kinds of different books, and you'll go to university and you learn something else different, and you come back home and you sound so different, and you've lost your faith, you've lost the true teachings, and so on. And that's the same way the Hebrew Israelite movement does as well. And I was very impressed at first with the Hebrew Israelite teaching. But recently I've become so disappointed, because I realize it is just another Christian type religion. Just another. And even as I told you already, that one of the popes said all the Abrahamic believers, all the Abrahamic religions they're all the same. They're Christian basically. But you just got different groups of them. Some will just be hardcore Christian and will just say they're a part of Christianity. And you have the whole term Christendom, which somehow has lost its savor today. But others will just call themselves something else. They might call themselves Baha'i, or they'll call themselves Hebrew Israelite. They're all the same thing. They use the same book. The same book. In some kind of way they do. And it was just a bit of disappointment, because they'll tell you don't be reading that stuff, and they taught us that from in the Christian church coming up. And now when you're in the Hebrew Israelite teaching, if you read a book, you must come up with the same understanding as your teacher, so you are not free to think. And so I made the lesson recently about titled Structured Group Thinking. You are not free to think on your own, because you are in another religion on the earth. Even though you call yourself a Hebrew Israelite, you are just in another religion on earth. And notice as well that if the term Hebrew Israelite is getting so popularized today, that just the term alone is being marketed by people who have the power to market that. Really? So you gotta wonder about that. Where does that power come from? And who is at the source of that power controlling it? I look at the Bible being spread around, and all these different holy books. You've got the Torah, you've got the New Testament, the Apocrypha, and you've got the Quran, and a lot of these top books for these top religions. Not necessarily talking about the very small religions that hardly get noticed, but the main top ones, like let's say in the top 5 or 10. They are usually involved in history in a lot of chicanery, backdoor dealings, and a lot of subjugation of people groups and nations, and taking over of countries, and stealing of land and killing of people, and passing cryptic laws that make you feel like it's like something out of the Night of the Living Dead, where you're running for your life and you got to try to hide to save yourself from the onslaught of the hundreds of zombies coming at you, who they were said to have died, but somehow they're still moving and coming at you in the cemetery. And you're running, hiding, and trying to save your life. Well, it's the same way all these religions that do this kind of stuff, that prey upon people and have been historically linked to war and murder and hatred and wickedness, they're coming at you, and you gotta run and hide in history to try to save your people, or the few of your people that do survive. And Hebrew Israelites are a part of this religious Bible-believing group. Something is wrong. See, I was very deeply involved in the Bible from when I was a small child. And it's funny that when I was not investigating it, from a child coming up and going to Bible college and so on, and just believing that I was at peace in my heart. But when I began a serious study of the Torah, just in recent times, then my heart became troubled. So in my own life, I then understand that not investigating the stuff keeps one at peace, like you're drugged out, you're in la la land. But when you seriously investigate and look into it, you become worried at the whole thing, like, wow, the Creator isn't really in this. I searched for the Creator and they told me He was God, and I was looking for God, and now my heart is worried because I realized I didn't find Him all these years, and still didn't find Him in the Hebrew Israelite movement. It's a big trick, right? And if you look at all these movements, these groups, and these religions connected to power nations, and what do you call them, world powers or superpowers and so on, who some of their own people even fight against them because they don't even agree with it. But when you look at them, they basically control what you are taught. Yet historically they are linked with wickedness and war and disease, biological attacks against people, even in ancient times, when you didn't consider it a biological attack, but you might just say like some great disease is just wiping out people in a land and you don't know what's causing it and so on. These things are really strange. But then you got many people publishing their books, such as the Bible, in many, many different versions. And where do they get the power to do that from? But because it's all under one umbrella, it's like it's all in one house. And they're all publishing the books, the religious books, and they're all benefiting from it because they're all getting a cut of the pie. It's a great deception, even the Torah. Does not mean that the Torah does not have any truthful things in it, because I said that already before. And many people have pointed out that a lot of the laws or the teachings in the Torah, some of them, are just normal to human existence, and they're found in other religious books and in other religions. So they can pass it off like that, especially when you put some histories in it. And you see, I can say this right now because at my very young level of investigating the Torah with limited knowledge of history and the Torah, I have still so far uncovered some things that are just shocking to me. If I had heard these things when I was like 10 or 20 years old, I'd have been like, man, no, I just couldn't have believed it. But now, after covering just some basic stuff in studying the Torah, I can see that the Torah is a great deception. So why is there any such thing as a Hebrew Israelite, or pardon me, a black Hebrew Israelite? The Hebrew Israelite is deceived and spreading their message about who the 12 tribes of Israel are all over there, even down to the islands and all that, where I come from, and going to Haiti and to Trinidad and Jamaica and Barbados and wherever else they're going to. I'm telling you that you are a Hebrew Israelite. This is very odd. This is very strange. But you notice, if you come up with anything about Africa, it just doesn't seem to fly well. And you hear about this whole Africa 2062. And you hear about we are the American Indians or the American Indians, and you hear about where the Cushites that came to Jamaica and to North America in general, and that spread all over from ancient times, and the Egyptians and so on that came and spread over. Now we are descendants of these people. These things don't seem to fly very well, but if you are connected to the Bible or to the Torah, that flies, and you can be empowered as a part of the whole worldwide Torah group to just identify yourself as a Hebrew Israelite. And you're still not answering some questions. I saw a brother, he was probably some Kemet brother, I don't know who he is, don't know his name I should say, but he was speaking to one of the street Israelite groups. And I saw this probably 2 years ago, and I just shrugged it up because he couldn't be right. Only to find out that I forgot about that completely, and ended up coming to the same part myself where I thought of it, and I'm like, wait, that brother actually asked that question to those Hebrew Israelites. Because lately, you know, I wanted to do a video on it, but I'll just share it right here. You look at Elijah going up in a chariot, and they have this whole UFO chariot stuff. He's going up in a chariot that comes and he picks him up and he leaves Elisha behind. So he leaves Elijah behind, he goes up in that chariot. And I'm wondering to myself, somehow the Bible seems to let you know, between Malachi and the end of the New Testament, that Elijah's going to come back as one of two supposed prophets that's going to come back. And somehow Elijah's going to come back. And it seems to me that he's coming back in the same kind of spirit that he operated in, and he's still coming back as a man. Like, he's not coming back as an angel or so. So it looks to me like he's coming back as normal. You know, he's got the same kind of knowledge, the knowledge of human existence, the knowledge of Israel, the knowledge of the Torah, the knowledge of ancient Israel, the knowledge of just how earth operates. So he's gonna come back in his regular sandals or whatever he's wearing, his clothes, his shoes. He must know of the garments of the priests as well, and so on. So he's just coming back as a man, but he is Elijah, the prophet from the Old Testament. Now if he's coming back like that, when he comes back, I would like to ask him, if I could see him and ask him, how did he flush the toilet up in heaven, and who was flushing the toilet up there? You see, you laugh, but you have to come at people like this to show them that they're in a religion, because religious views make you shrug off questions like that and say, that's dumb. But everything they say should be wise. Where is the man going up there in heaven and getting clothes from for a couple thousand years up in heaven? When he eats, where does he poo? And who's making his clothes up in heaven? Who's running the sewing machines up there to make him clothes to last all that time? Who? Who lives up in heaven? People do not live in heaven. The Torah clearly shows, since you believe in the Torah, and this is a Torah video, that he made man on the earth out of the dust of the earth, and when you die you even go back there. And even the Torah shows that people are going up to heaven in some kind of a vision or so, or in the New Testament, and they're just up there for a short time to like speak to quote unquote God. You're just having a message from him and so, and then they disappear. People live on earth. That's why even Isaiah said earth has opened up itself, right? Hell has opened up itself to receive people, because people just live on earth. But Elijah's going to live up in heaven. Who's going to feed him? He's growing crop up there. Who's going to feed him? If angels you teach me are coming down to earth and eating food from Abraham and from everybody else that's feeding them down here, that means they normally need food. So are they growing crop in heaven as well? Are they making clothes up in heaven? And if Elijah goes up there, who is running the industries up there? You mean the same European companies that are making all these sewing machines and so on, and clothes factories that are making all the money from them, are going to make his clothes up there as well too? So they continue to make the money in heaven. But if you tell me Elijah was a black man, he doesn't get to run the company up there and make the sewing machines and so on and make the mad money from it. This is really silly. People don't live in heaven. And as soon as we realize and understand that the Torah is deceiving us with some apparent supposed truth, is the sooner we will wake up and realize that somehow we have been duped, we have been tricked. The moment I began to see this deception in the Torah, in the different things I've been bringing out lately, is when I began to understand that this could not be of God. God cannot do this. So now let me just get back to the lesson anyway, which I said was the shadow of time, to show you more of the deception in the Torah, or rather time as shadow. Look here, I just read this morning from Job chapter 8 and verse 9. For we are but of yesterday and know nothing, because our days upon earth are a shadow. I'll read it again for you. For we are but of yesterday and know nothing, because our days upon earth are a shadow. So now if Job here is telling you that we're just of yesterday, he's saying we're of recent time. Right? But not necessarily that, but you got to understand that what he's saying is that you understand that we're of recent time, because that is the limit of your knowledge. And that's why it seems so recent to you. It's you who interpret what you see around you and say, we're of recent time. But now people are coming out saying we've been here for many, many more thousands of years than the Torah believers teach. Or millions of years, right? Like how they tell us that we're only here for nearly 6,000 years, and that Adam was only, like, I don't know what they say, 5,500, probably nearly 6,000 years. Right? But it says here that we're just of yesterday and we know nothing. So if the Torah itself is telling you that our knowledge is just recent and we know nothing, how can you be so sure that it's just about 6,000 years ago, since Adam? How can you be that sure when the Torah here is actually spelling out to you that we don't know stuff? In other words, he's saying that our knowledge is incomplete and that we continue to search. In fact, the verse above it, in verse 8, says, For inquire, I pray thee, of the former age, and prepare thyself to the search of thy fathers, if you really knew and was so sure. And if they, living a couple thousand years ago, was so sure in Job's time, why is he saying you got to search back for your fathers? Because you are disconnected and you don't know. So when somebody comes and tells you it's the truth, Adam lived this time and that time, you don't know for sure. You don't know. But he goes on here, says, you don't know anything, he says, because our days upon earth are a shadow. A shadow. And they talk about the sundial and so on. Now, if it's like a shadow, you know, when the sun hits you, it casts a shadow. So the sun is hitting you, and it throws a shadow beside you or behind you. But the shadow is not you. So he's letting you know that the time, you can't really tie it down. So how is the Torah community worldwide sure that Adam lived at this or that time? It's just a guess. And when it is taught as fact, it is religious deception. Because if it's just like a shadow, then the sun hit us in our existence on earth, and all we can know is just the shadow. Because the reality of our existence, when we were standing in the sun initially, we cannot trace that back to fact. We can only see the shadow of it until the shadow of it that we once were here or were there over this part of the earth or were there and so on. We cannot tie it down for sure. Our time on earth is a shadow. So we don't know how long we've been here. That's why so many people come and do their research and scientific stuff. Some say we've been here 10,000 years. Some say, if they're in the Bible stuff, that we're 6,000 years. Others say we've been here 50,000 years, 100,000 years. Others say millions of years. It's a shadow, you don't know, so everybody makes their best guess according to whatever spirits them in their search. But our time is as a shadow. We don't know. So now, no wonder the Torah, in its cleverness, says the Lord God formed man of the dust of the earth, and he blew breath into him. So he formed him out of the dust of the earth. And notice that it doesn't present it in a way where it sounds like he made a baby, like an infant. And the same with Eve. Eve just seems to have come up as well, like a fully grown woman, like an adult. Same as Adam. Because, and I mean, it goes back in line with this. Our time is like a shadow. Because in the shadow, you can see some kind of a silhouette or form of a man to tell a man is there, being hit by the sunlight. But the shadow itself is not the man. But you can tell something from the shadow that a man is standing right there. But you're just seeing the shadow. So if you're standing behind some great rock and you can't quite see the man, but you see his shadow, you're not seeing the man, but you're just seeing the shadow. Time as a shadow. So you cannot verify exactly what the man looks like, but you can tell he's there because it's a shadow. And worse if you come out and come around the rock and see and look, and it's some scarecrow stuff that they set up. So it turned out to not even be a real man after all. And that's how the shadow can trick you. It can look real, but it's not. That's why they go into all kinds of research and they find something 10,000 years, and then they come back and they say 50,000 years. And then another one says, oh, 100,000 years, because time is a shadow. You can't tell if it's a real man or if it was just a scarecrow that was cast in the shadow when the sun hit it. So to be sure of when Adam lived is a really strange thing. Because if the Torah presents Adam as a fully grown man, then I guess to us that seems more acceptable. Because if he was as an infant, then who? God was breastfeeding him, and God don't have breasts? Until you get into Egyptian teaching and you hear about the gods were a lot of females, and even in India a lot of female gods and so on. And I got no problem with that now that I understand that the Torah is fake. It really is. And you're listening to somebody who was studying the Torah because he believed in it. But because I don't run a church or a camp, I'm just free. I'm free to speak what comes to me. Now that is freedom. Because I noted in the Torah community that everybody could say as many different things about the same verse that they wanted to. The same thing I found in Christianity. Oh, you believe in oneness, and oh, you believe in the Trinity. Another person looked at the text. You should baptize in the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Another one comes and says, no, it means baptize in Jesus' name. This is all, it's ridiculous. It's time for people to just wake up. And so I don't have any problem. If they want to say God is female, God is male, whatever they want to say, it's up to them. It's their business. I don't have any problem with them anymore, because I realize this whole God stuff is a big trick. Especially listening now to Dr. Ben, which I didn't do all these years. He's saying that the Egyptians came up with God here. Somebody saying the Cushites came up with the idea of God. So it's basically the same thing. If they're making it up and you can't find anything more ancient than that to prove that, then I have to rest with that Cushite/Egyptians came up with the idea of God. And you notice that these people are not around anymore to speak authoritatively on their inception of God. But somebody else, some Johnny lately, that came afterwards and took over. And are making money from all these religions and the sales of these books they call the Bibles and the Torah and so on. They're the ones who can speak authoritatively. You cannot prove and verify God until the people who came up with it are there to speak for themselves. And even if you say, but they could have been wrong because there was a God of Israel before that who didn't call himself God of Israel at the time, he just called himself Elohim or Yahweh, then even so, because the kingdoms that were so early were taken down of the Cushites and the Egyptians, If they are not around anymore to speak for themselves, then you cannot say you have the truth, because that might not be the truth. We must hear from them. And so everybody should be free to think what they want until we can hear the people say it, or until we can find enough stuff to show that the current belief is true or not true. So if Adam didn't come as a baby because the Creator wasn't going to breastfeed him, then that means he came as a fully grown adult. Now, did Adam just come? And I mean, they surely couldn't have been just as a baby, like an infant, Adam and Eve, because are these babies, two of them, just going to be turning around bottle feeding each other? Because Eve sure didn't have a breast, and she wasn't there until after him, supposedly. So some kind of adult would have to be there to let them be fed, to grow them up. So it seems like they probably just came straight up as an adult, just instantly made like that. Creator, whoever or whatever he or it is, it seems like he just made us. Probably many people at the same time. Who knows? I wasn't there. But I would guess that initially we were probably just made as an adult, grown up. Because who would have really breastfed us if we were all just made as infants? We would have died. And the quote-unquote human race or human existence would have died out. It makes more sense to me, in my thought right here, that we just popped up in creation as adults at the start, and then we continue to grow, like the Torah says, whose seed is in itself, talking about the plants and the trees. So the seed of man was in man also. So the adult beings then had children, and they were able to breastfeed and nurture and grow up the child and get food for the child as the child grew, and so on. That seems to me to be more how it came about. But the first time Adam was made or created, how did he know that it was year one? Like the Creator just made him and told him, you were just made this morning and you need to start counting from today as day one. Let me teach you how to count. Say 1, 2, 3, and he goes on like that. Did the Creator just tell him that? Look up the history of counting and to see when man started to count and started to barter and trade and stuff like that. So Adam wasn't counting from initially from day one to know this is the first year and the second year and so on. So how does the Torah know that where Adam was just about 6,000 years ago when Eden was created? How? It cannot know that because Adam never started counting, so he doesn't know. So whoever told Moses that does not know. They're just making their own guess from their current at the time history. Because yesterday, time is as a shadow. So they just counted from wherever they saw people and knew of people and counted that as year one. And say we've been here now 900 years or something like that. But how did they know what the real year one was before? Was there really a year one? A lot of teachings in the Torah is just not sure. And to teach it as if it's all fact, one after the other, turn this page, turn the next page, turn the next page until you get to the whole Torah. Everything is just fact, believable just the way you read it, especially when we understand that history has to be interpreted. Then how can the Torah just teach itself as fact? Because it is just another religious book like all the other religions on earth that tells you this and that is factual, and when you're done with it and decide to change the religion because you're fighting with the pastor or the teacher or the guru, then the next religion becomes truth and their holy book becomes true unto you. These are all religious stuff. All religious stuff. It's all fake. God never appeared to these people in the Torah. He did not. And you know how I know that? Because he's not appearing to you either. That is the truth. When have you seen God be so distant in the Torah from people, so silent for thousands of years? He showed up to all these people in the Torah. Every minute, every now and then, he's popping up, showing up to somebody and showing them his light or his glory or whatever. Come up this mountain or appear there, or send an angel. And he can't send any angel today. He can't send anybody today. It's fake because it's only real on the pages of the Torah. But God has disappeared for a couple thousand years now and can't show up again because the men who wrote the Bible stopped writing it. So God does not get to show up anymore. Time as shadow. It's all a big trick. And when you go back in the past in history and search it out and put your religious belief that you were conquered with to the side for just a moment, then you can begin to see that there is another story behind the story. And that doesn't mean you have arrived. You're just beginning your search for who and what we are when we say we exist.